Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have an assortment of absolutely horrifying encounters and some very captivating video evidence of possible cryptid, Dogman, Bigfoot, crawler, whatever. Before we jump into it though, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and the membership are in the description below. The merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? Alright guys, we are going to start today off with a video clip from Paranormal Reddit. The original video that you'll see first is not zoomed in. Person is in their backyard with their dog, probably a year-old or up to a year-old pup, and he's very unsettled. Now, when zoomed in and kind of you can see everything, you actually see something go across the screen and hide behind the tree. And then at one point you see eye shine behind the tree. Check it out.
You good, bud? What you barking at? What you barking at, bud? Stop barking, bud. What's wrong? Are you confused by your own shadow? Come on, let's go. You good, bud? What you barking at? What you barking at, bud? Stop barking, bud. What's wrong? Are you confused by your own shadow? Come on, let's go.
A very interesting video clip. I saw this. Where did I see this? I forget where I saw it, but then I stalked down the original video and kind of did my own edit so you guys could see what I saw without any talking in it. So let's get into today's first encounter. The year was 2015. Myself, my best friend Steve, and his oldest son Jeremy went fishing at Morgan Monroe Reservoir. We would go every year for an all-night trip in August. I would meet up at Steve's and load my fishing gear in his truck, help him load his so we could get started sooner. I looked forward to this trip every year. It was a way of decompressing from the year. Steve's son Jeremy had just started his senior year in school and was eager to get done with school. At this time, I was only 28 years old and told him enjoy life now because adulting sucks. Laughing while I said it, Steve and I had known each other for over 10 years at this point and had worked together for the same amount of time. Our friendship was more like a brotherhood and always had each other's back and treated each other like family. As we started the drive to our favorite spot to fish, I mentioned to Steve that we needed to stop and buy some more bait. He shook his head in irritation, and I asked, "What's wrong?" Steve replied, "I just want to sit down by some water sooner than later." "I thought you bought bait already." I felt bad, but what can I say? I'm only human. We stopped at a small gas station in Martinsville and got some worms and some other miscellaneous stuff to use as bait. We loaded everything up and made it on our way. Listening to some classic 80s tunes, all three of us were excited to go and catch some fish. From the gas station to the reservoir was 30 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. As we pulled onto the grass, there was a sign that said closed due to animal attack. The trail we had to walk down to get to the water was covered in a shadow because the sun started to set, but we didn't care about that or the sign. Both Steve and I carry a firearm when we're not at work, so we got out our gear and made our way down the trail with no haste because we were eager to start fishing. As we got set up, the three of us were talking smack on who would catch the most fish. Jeremy was the first to put a line into the water and proclaim he would fish us both out of the water. Steve and I scoffed and put our lines in shortly thereafter. After a few hours, we were having fun talking about random things, cars, girls, work, BS. Jeremy stood up and told us that he'd be right back. He had to pee. I told him, "Take a flashlight. It's too dark and you'll get lost." Jeremy took a light and disappeared into the darkness. Around the same time, we started to hear this knocking in the distance. Knock, knock, knock. This put a chill down my spine, but then the thought crossed my mind that it was Jeremy just fooling around. As Jeremy came back, Steve asked him, "Hey, could you not act like an idiot when you're out in the middle of nowhere?" Jeremy replied, "First, what are you talking about? Second, who was making the knocking noise?" Then the knocking noise started again, only this time louder. Knock, knock, knock. I stood up and grabbed the flashlight from Jeremy, pointing it in the direction of the sound. Looking in that direction, I didn't see anything. Then suddenly something large landed very close to where we were sitting. I pointed the flashlight toward where I thought it had landed, and the light traveled across the grass until I saw it. A large rock weighing at least 10 pounds, maybe more. Steve was starting to worry that maybe someone was messing with us. Jeremy said he didn't think it seemed like something a person would do. He asked then, could it be a bear with fear in his voice and eyes? I replied, no, bear don't normally knock, nor do they throw rocks. I was starting to worry myself, so I got out the firearm from its holster and ready to be fired if need be. The knocking and rock throwing stopped for a while, so we thought maybe it's over. I looked at my phone, realizing that it was almost 3 a.m, but it really didn't feel like it. Knock, knock echoed across the woods. Then the most disturbing sound came after only a few seconds, and it was a mix between a howl and a yell. This noise was way too close for comfort and gave me goose pimples. I asked the guys, is everyone ready to leave? We all said yeah and started packing up. Then another rock was thrown and hit the ground right next to me. I almost pissed my pants right on spot. Steve grabbed the flashlight and pointed it towards where the sound was coming from. And there, maybe 30 to 40 yards between some trees, was a tall, dark shadow. The shadow was almost 7 feet off the ground, with reddish, orange, hellfired eyes. Jeremy asked instantly, "Can we go, please?" He was scared, beyond scared at this point. Steve looked at me, and we both knew this was no person nor a bear. The knocking and rock throwing continued. We were walking pretty fast down the trail, which was parallel to the water's edge. We had almost 100+ yards to go before getting to the trunk, and kerplunk, followed by a splash right next to where we were. This sounded like whatever it was had thrown a boulder instead of a rock. All three of us stopped in our tracks and looked around to see if anything was getting closer. Heavy footsteps were moving and sounded like whatever was making its way in a hurry. Even with the flashlights, we could barely see anything. Jeremy started saying, "Do you think this is why the area is closed?" No one replied. We just kept walking. We heard glass break ahead of us, which only meant something was by the truck. Our hearts were beating so fast at this point, we were acting on pure adrenaline and instinct. Myself and Steve both had our guns drawn and ready to use if needed. We kept hearing more and more noises. One noise we heard sounded like a loud screech, like something was dying. I asked Steve, "Does the remote start work from here?" Steve reached into his pocket to get out his keys, and as he did, we got a whiff of the most foulest smell, a cross between rotting tree and wet dog. To me, it felt like whatever it was very close. So close to the point that I heard low growls just ahead of us. A loud crash and a knock right in front of us sounded like something had smashed one tree against another. Finally making it to the truck, we saw that all 4 windows had been smashed in. The screeching noise was realized at that moment. I opened the tailgate to see what used to be a raccoon. Its head smashed, back broke, and stomach tore open. This was a gruesome sight to see, and we were all in panic mode. We all piled in the truck, and Steve started it up. As the lights from the truck came on and illuminated the woods in front of us, there it was. This blackish brown, well over 7 feet tall. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I would have never believed it. It was real, and it was here in Indiana. Some sort of creature standing about 15 yards in front of the truck with a large rock in its hand. It had a very angry look on its face. This dog-like Bigfoot creature was showing no signs of backing down. Steve started to back up slowly at first, but then it started to come towards us. "Dad, go faster!" screamed Jeremy. So Steve put his foot to the floor and we got the hell out of there. Then there was a loud bang that caused the back of the truck to move a little, and we kept driving. We drove the whole way home, not saying a word, with our eyes wide open. I don't think we even blinked at all. We pulled into the driveway at Steve's house. Floodlights came on over the garage. We stepped out and looked at the truck closer. There were dents, scratches, plus broken windows. We looked in the tailgate. There was a huge rock in the back. So that loud bang had been this thing throwing that rock, Steve said. "Was that what I thought it was?" I replied. "I don't know what that was." Jeremy, at this point, wasn't saying anything, just in complete shock. Steve tried to tell his wife what happened, but she didn't believe him. She thought he was drinking and wrecked the truck. I told my wife about it, and she laughed at me. This really happened, but no one cared, and no one wanted to believe us. Next time we go fishing, we are going to make sure to not ignore any sign ever posted and stick to a safer side of things. It's 2023, and we still have not gone back to that fishing spot. I often wonder if anyone was ever attacked there. Alright guys, this next video clip I shared last night Not a lot of people saw the video. I was kind of disappointed. Maybe it was the title. I don't know. But this is on TikTok. It's kind of blown up on TikTok. And they're saying that this deer survived a bear attack. Now, like I said in last night's video, for those of you who saw it, clearly, the landscape in the surrounding area does not look to me like grizzly bear country. It looks more like a black bear country. And I did Google the percentage of a black bear attacking a deer, and it is a low probability. A grizzly, on the other hand, high probability, as we all know. Judging from the tears and the kind of markings, it doesn't look like a black bear's kind of hooked claws would. I'm almost guessing that if it was a grizzly, that this thing would, not be alive to walk away like the way it is. And it happened a while ago because the blood has coagulated and dried up. I'm kind of wondering, is this a bear? Or is it a Dogman? Or is it a Sasquatch? Sasquatches do hunt. They do hunt deer. And, people don't realize that Sasquatch do have claws. They have nails, They don't sit in their bathroom with fingernail clippers trimming their nails. They do grow claws. And with the power behind those claws, I guarantee they could shred a lot. I don't know. I don't know if I buy a bear did this or if it was the two bigger kind of hairy cryptoid in the woods, Dogman, Bigfoot. What do you guys think? Check it out. Very chilling and sad video clip. Once again, I'm not saying 100% that was Dogman or Bigfoot. It might have been a bear. But those are awful clean cuts. Either way, it's a horrific video clip. Let's get on to today's second encounter. I was 9 years old at the time of this experience. I am now 21. Before I share the experience, I want to give you a little information. I was living with my mom at the time, and we were living in these people's garage, which was renovated into a type of apartment. It was one large space that had a kitchen and a bathroom. As you entered the apartment through the door, you entered me and my mom's bedroom. The door did not lock. Our apartment was about 30 feet away from a main gate, which was attached to a brick wall that surrounded the rest of the property. It wasn't a very high wall, and there were trees lined up in front of the wall. The yard was big, and there was a swing that was connected to a treehouse which belonged to the landlord's son. For the sake of the experience, we'll call him Eli. Now, let me share you the experience. One night, my mom had gone out, and I was alone. As far as I knew, the landlords weren't home either. Otherwise, Eli and I would have had a sleepover or just played together. I decided to sit outside of the apartment enjoying the cool night breeze. I was minding my own business when I got the most dreadful feeling that I wasn't alone and that I was being watched. I scanned the surroundings to find the cause of the feeling, and finally my gaze fell upon a gate. The street was well lit, and I could see the outlines of the trees, but I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary until movement by the gate caught my eye. It looked like the outline of a head crouched behind where the wall and the gate met. I couldn't make out much, but I could see a pair of eyes, and the head seemed to be covered in fur. If I listened carefully, I could hear what sounded like panting. My first thought was, oh, it's a dog, but that thought left rather quickly as the head snapped up. Now a 7-foot frame was towering over the wall, and I could see that it was covered in fur, but was standing on 2 legs like a person. Its head faced me, and I could feel my heart beating. I slowly got up and made my way to the door, not taking my eyes off this thing just in case it moved. I started crying in fear and frustration as I tried to close the door without looking for the handle or something without looking away. But after a few seconds, the creature put its arms on the gate, and I could see the outlines of sharp, long claws. And that did it for me. I looked at the door, grabbed it, and slammed that door closed without taking another look. I put what little weight I had against the door to keep it closed, and I stayed very still, listening carefully. I could hear footsteps coming closer to the door, and I started a full-on panic tearing down my face. Then I heard a low growl right outside of the door, and it pushed at the door enough to almost open it. The growl grew louder. I know what I did was possibly the worst thing to do, but I was a terrified child. I screamed at the top of my lungs as loud as I could. The growling stopped, and after a couple of minutes I stopped screaming, and I thought I could hear footsteps leaving. I waited a long time before quietly moving away from the door and fetching a chair and putting it in front of the door. I then tried to move very quietly and went to the kitchen to grab my mom's biggest kitchen knife she had and hid it under my bed, along with myself, which faced the direction of the door. I tried staying awake, but from pure fear and exhaustion I passed out. I woke up to the sound of the door opening and the chair being pushed aside. I clutched the knife in my hands, only to hear a familiar voice and see a pair of ugly pink sneakers that I knew were my mom's. I came out from underneath the bed, leaving the large knife there, and hugged her. She held me back and didn't even ask why I was under the bed, and I could see that she was exhausted. I decided not to say anything as I let her go to bed, and I made my way to the door to look outside. It was now daylight. I didn't know the time, but I did see Eli playing on the swings. I stepped outside and looked around. Everything seemed fine. Eli noticed me, waving and calling my name. I waved back to join him, and we talked. I almost forgot about the night before. I heard his dad calling him. He promised to come over later and play. And then he ran to his house. I smiled, feeling relaxed, got off the swing, and started walking back to our apartment. Just before I reached the door, I heard Eli calling me. I stopped and looked toward his house, but he wasn't there. I was confused, and I heard him call me again. But this time, I looked by the swings and regretted it instantaneously. Right behind the treehouse next to the swings stood a tall creature staring at me with sunken dark holes where its eyes would have been. Its limbs were unnaturally long, its body just huge. I thought I could see antlers, but they appeared to be large ears. But I didn't look any longer. I ran inside, grabbing a knife from under my bed, and was about to slam the door, but When I looked, it was not there anymore. I closed the door and stayed close to my mom the rest of the day, never seeing that creature again. I don't even know if there were more than one creature or not, but I really hope I never see them again. Alright guys, tonight's final video clip is a video of a woman and her family staring at something in their backyard. Whatever it is does appear to have glowing red eyes, and it does blink. Check it out.
¡Allá está! ¡Para que no voy a abrir la ventana! ¡Para! ¡Hay un ojo! ¡Mira! ¿Lo alcanzas a ver? ¡Mira! ¿Qué es eso? ¡Ay! ¡Es el diablo! ¡Ay! ¡Corre! ¡Diablo! ¡Tráeme el celular! ¡Mira lo que sube la red! ¡Mira! ¡Allá está! ¡Para que no voy a abrir la ventana! ¡Para! ¡Hay un ojo! ¡Mira! ¿Lo alcanzas a ver? ¡Mira! ¿Qué es eso? ¡Ay! ¡Es el diablo! ¡Ay! ¡Corre!
Tonight's final encounter. This experience happened while I was a teenager over 15 years ago. I grew up in the Adirondacks and spent most of my childhood and teenage years camping or being outside in any capacity. 2 summers in a row, I joined a group that would travel around the rural back roads and pick up any kind of garbage. Mostly just cleanup jobs, usually along the roadside. Occasionally, however, we would be asked by the rangers to clean up trails or county roads where people would dump their garbage in the woods. This particular day, the group I was with had to split up and take quadrants. We were given GPS units, however, back then the accuracy was usually within 100 meters if you were lucky. Was not an issue for me as I had some most survival skills amongst the others in the group. I had dreams of becoming a trail guide or a forest ranger back then. However, others were uncomfortable and chose to stay closer to the main roads, which left me having to be dropped off at the end of a Forest Service road and walk my way back to the agreed area for pickup. We each were given a roll of garbage bags and a poke stick for collecting the trash. The area I was dropped off in was known as one of the worst and larger dump sites. People drop off their old couches, chairs, even mattresses, and various pieces of furniture could be found all along this area. But someone with a flatbed truck had already come through and picked up the larger crap. All that was left were smaller items, such as bottles, cans, bags, papers, anything along those lines. Unfortunately, once in a while, you would find things dumped, more of a darker nature, like unwanted house pets that were dispatched in an inhumane way. And on this day I happened to come across a litter of puppies. I was not given a radio, but if I had a radio, I would have called it in, and they would have come and got me at that point, as they tried to keep us youths from seeing anything serious. This was not the first time I had seen things of this nature, unfortunately, so I took the time to collect all the puppies and put them in a bag instead of leaving them in a pile of the other bags that I had already filled. I buried them. So I dropped off my backpack full of supplies and my poke stick near the road, walked into the woods with just the bag. I walked maybe 20-ish minutes from the road before I found a rather large pine tree that looked great for a resting spot for these guys. I put the bag at the bottom of the tree and started walking in a slow circle around the tree, searching for a stick or a rock or something similar to start digging with. I found a rather large branch and was able to break in half and use my pocket knife I had always carried to sharpen one end. I went back to the tree and started digging a hole. It took a while, as there were several roots. I had to work my way around. Once I dug the hole, about 1.5 feet deep, I proceeded to lay my ill-gotten quarry to rest, without the bag, as I did not want to add to the trash that was already out there. I took a few minutes to cry and pray. Honestly, seeing abuse of this kind is very hard for me. However, As I was leaving little gifts for them, slowly covering them up, I heard a small branch fall maybe 50-ish feet to my left. The position I was in kept me from being able to see because of the branches of the tree I was crouched below. I quit talking and moving and just listened for any further sounds. It was not in a moment when the forest went quiet. I could hear some birds, but they were off on the opposite side further away from where the sound had come, which I had not noticed had changed from them being around me to being almost on a certain side in my distracted state of being swallowed up by my emotions. After sitting there for maybe 3 minutes quietly looking around and trying to look through the branches to my left, not seeing anything, I continued working. After I completely covered these puppies up, I left several pine cones and a pretty cool rock I had found I kept in my pocket. I got it out and started walking away. It was at this time I heard what could only be described as a moan mixed with a growl. Now I am definitely in bear country, and there are cougar in the Adirondacks, so that was my main concern. A natural predator had smelled and came to investigate. I only had a pocket knife as any form of defense. I wasn't scared yet, as I assumed that it would maybe have been two trees rubbing together in the wind. That's rather common when you are in the forest. Looking around, I found nothing, but just as I was about to keep walking, I saw a branch and the bark come falling down from the tree 30 yards from the big tree I had just left. I looked up the tree, as it was only about half the size of the large pine tree, and midway up I could see something I do not have a description for. It looked like it was brownish gray-green color, no obvious shape that I could describe, and probably only the size of a small bear. Immediately I jumped and said a bad word and turned around and took several steps backward, keeping my eyes on whatever this thing was. I couldn't tell if it was something alive or not. When it started moving, however, I could tell that it was not something that was attached to the tree. Honestly, I can't tell you what I saw. It didn't have fur like a bear or a mountain lion, and it wasn't just skin either. It looked almost like it was living moss, but as far as I know, the Adirondacks do not have anything like this. We also do not have sloths, and this thing didn't look like any other animal I had ever seen. I couldn't tell if it had a head or a face until it turned and looked at me. It had a face, but it was squished. I couldn't see its eyes or facial features, other than it being dark. Excuse my lack of details. It was around 80 feet from this thing, and it was in a tree. It was mildly cloudy that day, and if you've ever been in the woods, you know that there is always shade from the canopy. So I could not get enough eyesight on this thing. I could tell, however, that it had 4 limbs, as they were wrapped around the tree. The paws were almost like raccoon-like claws, and it definitely had fingers. It had a long rat-like tail that it used that was about the length of its body and occasionally swished back and forth. I could see it poking from behind the tree. It climbed down the tree slowly, watching me, and that's when I noticed that it had soft, rounded ears on the side of its face, almost like a person. It made no sound as it came down except for a light scraping of its claws. It came to a branch about 12 feet from the ground and climbed out onto it. It moved just like a raccoon, honestly, but the shape of its body and rounded head, with seemingly no neck, was definitely not a raccoon. It was not a bear or any other animal that I could think of, like a fisher, because it had no snout poking out. Its face was smashed with a nose that looked like holes. Not any obvious shape, vaguely like a monkey. Its eyes were lighter in color, as it caught the sun occasionally. and its skin, or whatever covering it looked like, was blending into the growth of the tree or rock on the ground. It let out this low-pitched whistle, and that's when I decided I've seen enough, glanced backwards to make sure my path was clear, and turned and pretty much ran. Looking back several times, I wasn't followed, and I never saw it again, but to this day, I wonder what it was. I told the ranger in charge of us that day what I saw, and he said it was probably a raccoon with mange. And when I said its face did not look like a raccoon or any other animal that's local, he said I must have been mistaken. Its face was similar to that of a snub-nosed monkey, but the color and overall proportions or shapes were not. There was no known monkey species in North America, and it was not an escaped exotic pet. I don't have an answer for what I saw that day. It clearly was comfortable climbing trees, so to this day I always look up when I am in the woods. I don't know if any creature or species that matches what I saw, and I've spent years researching on and off. This isn't my scariest experience, but it's definitely one of the more stranger. Thank you for allowing me to share. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed today's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Guys, your support and kindness is really what makes this channel what it is, and it is special. The community that you guys have created in the comment section is just second to none. The amount of respect and dignity that you guys give each other is awesome, so thank you. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real, they are out there, and they are dangerous. If we share just a little bit of information with the people that we love and care about, we just may save some of their lives someday. Until next time, God bless you all.